So we have about half an hour or so to explore some ideas. It might seem like we're doing a lot of this, and we are, but today's talk was already arranged 6 months ago. So in recent weeks we've been discussing things such as life, death, karma, destiny, purpose and meaning in life. These are all not necessarily topics that we discuss regularly over a cup of tea, but we're here to gain insight into our lives and a deeper purpose to our life. So it just so happens that today's discussion is called An Appointment with Death. An appointment with death. Have you all come for that? Come to have an appointment with death? Let's see. So let me first begin by paying my deep respects and my gratitude to my spiritual teachers and to the Supreme. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Siddhaswarupananda Paramhamsa Tina Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Go Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. These teachings, this wisdom that we're trying to share, comes down through an unbroken line, a lineage, chain of spiritual teachers and disciples, known as the Guru Parampara. So this wisdom begins with the Supreme, begins with Krishna. And these teachings are handed down from self-realized teachers to whoever wants to listen. And then whoever applies that teaching and those practices to their own life can also come to realize, to know, to experience directly these same spiritual truths and ultimate reality. So I'm simply trying to pass on a little of what I've been able to capture, which is of great importance. Because why? It benefits our life. And in today's discussion, it also benefits our death. So are you all aware that you have an appointment? Do you have it in your calendar? Do you have it in your phone when your appointment with death is? Anyone? No, most of us don't put that in our calendar. We put all kinds of things in our calendar. But we tend to put that appointment to the background. It's not usually something most people like to discuss. If you go to the pub, it's not usually something that, it's usually football or sport or something like that. But because it is inevitable. One of the first truths, if you like, or understandings in my spiritual life, realizations I had, is this reality that I also have an appointment with death. Even though I was only in my 19s or 20s or 21 when I began to explore some, deeper spiritual teachings. It's one of the first realizations I had. This also will happen to me. And if I look back and I see now, both my mother and father, they had an appointment. My grandfather and grandmother, they also had appointments. And all the people before that had these appointments with death. So it kind of dawned on me that this may also happen to me. And it's also guaranteed. In the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna says, for one who is born, death is certain. Certain. Not maybe, certain. For one who is born, death is certain. Okay, why do we have to talk about this? By exploring it, we can actually find a solution and remove the fear of death. The idea is not to scare the shit out of us or make us feel like really bad and morose or anything like that. In fact, the reason to explore it is to actually shine a light on what it is. And when you see it for what it is, it actually removes the fear of death. So it actually is about freeing us from the bondage of death, to break the chains of death. And in that way, to truly live joyfully now, to live a life now free from fear, we actually need to come to know what is death. So the story that I wanted to tell is a wisdom story from Persia. Now it's really unfortunate, I was just thinking about this today, that we tend to neglect ancient wisdom. You know, it's something which we don't kind of embrace into our life, thinking somehow or other in our arrogance that it does not, it's from the past, you know, we're in modern times now. But if you look at life now in general, you find that people are still being influenced by others. You know, we're influenced by the opinions of celebrities, what they have to say. You know, how many followers do they have on Facebook? Some of them millions, don't they? And people follow and listen to what they have to say. Who else? Movie stars. For some reason, if you went to acting school and you're able to act, then your opinion is more important than someone who is maybe a street cleaner, or someone who picks up the garbage, or someone who works in an office. The same with musicians, right? What some famous musician says in their song, or what they say on their social media, that tends to have a lot of importance. But if we look at it, are they actually the people who we should be, emulating, listening to? Well, let's look at what their lives are. What are their lives about? If you look at many of them, their lives are not so, should not be emulated or followed. They have many troubles themselves. So anyway, so I was just thinking about this today. In every single culture in the world, through time immemorial, there have been great sages who have been trying to offer these truths for our benefit. So not just any particular culture, any country of any time. Truth is actually universal. I remember my spiritual teacher using this example of gold. Some people are have this idea that, there's the Christian truth, the Christian religion, and there is, the Hindu religion, and the Muslim religion, and there's Buddhist teachings or Taoist teachings. There's all of these different things, and they are, this is my teachings, I'm a Christian, or I am a Hindu. But actually, truth is truth. Truth is universal, and it is applicable in the past, it is applicable now, and it will be applicable in the future. So my teacher used the example of gold. He said gold is gold for everybody. You don't have Hindu gold, or Christian gold, or Muslim gold, and you only have, if you're a Muslim, you have to buy Muslim gold, or if you're a Hindu, you only buy Hindu gold. No, gold is gold. So similarly, truth is truth, no matter where it may come from. So here, we're going to be exploring some ideas that have come from Persia, and it's called an appointment with death. So the story goes that there was a rich merchant in Baghdad. He lived in Baghdad many hundreds and hundreds of years ago, and he was inviting a lot of friends over to have some celebration. So he called some of his servants, or one of his servants, and gave him a list of things to buy. And so he went to the marketplace to buy for that evening's celebration. So as the servant is walking around the marketplace, and he's buying some of this and buying some of that, and then all of a sudden he feels someone pushing in the back. So he's a little startled by this. So he kind of a little bit angrily turns around to see who it is. And as he turns around, he sees this person close to him, looking right into his eyes. And he realized this is not an ordinary person. And it struck him that this is death personified. This is death personified. And of course it completely freaked him out. And he immediately dropped all of his baskets because he was afraid of death. And he ran as fast as he could back, to the mansion. And when he arrived, of course, the merchant asked him, "Where is, I sent you to buy these things. Where is it? Where's all the things I've asked you to buy?" And of course, the guy was freaked out. So he said, "What's happened? What is the matter?" So he explained, the servant explained to the merchant that he was going through the marketplace, He felt someone pushing from behind, and he turned around and he realized it was death personified, staring him in the face. And he was actually weeping. He said, "And I don't want to die, please help me. I'm not ready to die, please help me." So the merchant took some compassion, on his friend and servant. And he said, "If you like, you can go to the stables and pick one of the fastest horses we have there. And if you ride quickly, in 2 hours, you can be in the city of Samara. And in that way, you will be saved from personified death, who is here in Baghdad in the marketplace." So immediately he went to the stables, got on the horse, spurred the horse, he wanted to get away, and very quickly rode for 2 hours to Samara. Meanwhile, the merchant decided he himself would also go to the market. He wanted to see, what is this death personified? So he's walking around the market, and then he sees this personality lurking, loitering in different places, and he realizes this is the person that his servant was speaking about. So he boldly went up to this person and confronted him, basically, and asked him, "Why are you loitering? Who are you, and why are you loitering here and there?" And he explained, "I'm dead, and I come here, and today I'll be picking up some living beings. It is their time to leave, and I have come to get them." So the merchant also asked him, "Why did you push my servant who was here previously? What were you doing? What's this all about?" So he said, "I didn't mean to startle him, but I was just very surprised to see him in the markets in Baghdad." He said, "I have an appointment with him in Samara this afternoon, and I was wondering why he was here." End of story. So, of course, this is meant to be contemplated, because one part I left out, that the death personified also said to the merchant, he said, "I'm here to pick up different living beings. This is my job." He said, "One day I will also be coming for you," and pointed to him. So as I said, generally, we have a tendency to have some fear because it is unknown on what death is. But wisdom, and here we'll be exploring the wisdom of yoga, the teachings of yoga, of the Vedas, which actually shed a light on what is death, and then also how to overcome the fear of death for ourselves, and also not to be overwhelmed by the death of loved ones, because this is also inevitable. It is that everyone has this appointment. So the first thing to understand is, what is death? Death is not the cessation of existence of the living being. Death actually means the living being, we, the spirit soul, who are temporarily residing in a particular body. There will come a time when this body which we are walking around in will be unusable. For some reason or other, it can be hit by a car, it may have some cancer, it may just simply reach the end point. Like all vehicles, like cars, there's a point where you can keep repairing it only so much, and then it reaches a point where you can no longer put new parts in it and it won't go anymore. So our vehicles, our bodies, will also one day be reaching this experience. So death simply means that I, the living being, can no longer stay in this particular body. Is that clear? So for the living being, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, for the living being there is no such thing as birth or death. That the living being is eternal and ever existing. The living being is undying. That never was there a time that we did not exist, and never in the future shall any of us cease to be. Is that understandable? If we understand that we are not material. This body is temporary, it is impermanent. Whatever has a beginning also must have an end. But we, the living being, the Atma, the spirit soul, have no beginning nor any end. So this fear of what will happen to me may still be there, even though we may understand that we are eternal spirit soul. and we are actually eternal parts and parcels of the Supreme Soul. But the idea is, the question is, if I do not die, then what happens to me? Where do I go? And this is actually an important question. In other words, our life is a journey. And like any intelligent person going on a journey, we, first of all, prepare for that journey. We prepare by deciding where we are going to go, what our destination is, because that is within our control to actually come to know what our to decide what our destiny, what our destination is. Then how we are going to get there. Like if we're going to go to, Noumea or somewhere like that, Fiji, am I going to swim? Am I going to walk there? Well, no, this probably won't happen. So we have to actually decide how to reach my destination. By what means will I get there? So this is where I want to start reading a couple of nice things. So we don't want to go, I didn't plan on going in depth into explaining and giving a lot of philosophy to understand how we are not our bodies, and we are also not the mind. That's why we do the mindfulness meditation practice, is we actually get to have some insight into the fact that we are not our physical bodies, we are the silent witness, we are the self, and also how we are not our mind. So let me find some nice things to read. So this is to do with the nature of the self. So Krishna is saying, O son of Bharat, Arjuna, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity, one within the body, illuminate the entire body by consciousness. One who knowingly sees this difference between the body and the owner of the body and can understand the process of liberation from this bondage also attains to the supreme goal. So maybe we'll just briefly touch on this idea by asking you, has anyone here seen a dead body? A few people. Okay, so for those of you who have not seen a dead body, maybe I'll use me as an example. Let's say right now I died of some unknown cause, a heart attack or something like that. You would begin to notice there is something different about me, wouldn't you? What would you notice? Huh? I'd be quieter. Yeah. What else might happen? Is that a good thing, or is... I would lose colour, yes. Even before that, though, something else would happen. I'd fall off the chair. Yeah, I'd fall off my perch. And then hopefully, not all of you would immediately bolt for the door. Like, if you kind of realise that, Radha Krishna has just died, many people might want to just get up and run out the door just to get away from it. But maybe someone, because there's a few friends here who are, medical people, maybe you'd come up, and what would you check? What's the first thing you would do? Pulse, breath, things like that, right? Just to see, what's going on. Then maybe you try and do some, CPR and things like that. So let's say, you call the ambulance, you call the, the paramedics, and they're trying, and can't bring him back. What happens next? They take the body away, and then after some time, they either burn me, or they put me in the dirt. Isn't that what happens? Okay, so if, just to give a little bit of this idea, if we actually think this body is me, and we think this is my friend, this is my mother, this is my partner, and we look at their body and we think this is actually the person, are you allowed to put people in boxes and then put them in the dirt? Is that allowable? What happens if you, let's say I didn't die. Let's say you just decided to come and grab me right now. A few of you could get me and drag me down the stairs, and then put me in a box, and you're going to take me out to, Currumbin somewhere, and you're going to dig a hole and put me in the box in the hole. What would happen if you were stopped or caught by the police? You'd be had up for kidnapping and for attempted murder, wouldn't you? Hopefully. That would hopefully what would happen. So that's where we're coming back to this idea. But when the person has left the body, when the person has, in quotes, died, if you don't put that in a box and put it in the dirt, you will be arrested. Isn't that true? You have to do that. So every single person, although may not fully realize or know completely this reality through realization, we have insights into the difference between the body when the person is in it and the body when the person is no longer present in the body. And as I said, anyone who's seen a dead body will actually know this very clearly. But even through intuition and through our intelligence, we can understand that there is a difference between the two. And we are aware of the presence of the self due to consciousness. Consciousness is the symptom of the self. In the same way as fire, like smoke and heat are symptoms of fire, right? Smoke and heat are the symptoms that there is fire, unfortunately, as we know, at present. So similarly, consciousness, awareness, personality, individuality, these are symptoms of the Atma, or the eternal spiritual being who is present within the body. So in the dead body, and it is due to the self, the conscious being, why the mouth speaks, sound comes out of the mouth, the eyes see, the ears hear, the hands can touch. It is because the conscious living being is present. In the dead body, these things are not present. The mouth does not speak, the eyes do not see, the ears do not hear, and the hands do not feel. So it is the conscious living being's presence in the body which actually makes it appear to be alive. In fact, the body is never alive. Did you know that? There is no such thing as a live body. The body is always dead. But it is due to the presence of the soul, or the presence of the self, that it appears to be alive. It exhibits these symptoms of life. So knowing this, knowing our true nature, this removes the sting from death. So when our loved one also has to leave their body for some reason or other, we understand that person is still existing. They are continuing on their journey also, as I am continuing on mine. Are there anything anyone wants to ask or comment up to this point before we kind of go on? Is it simple to understand? Next time you see a dead body, the dead body might be on the side of the road, it could be roadkill, or it could be a cat or a dog or a budgie or whatever you might have, and you will very easily come to understand the difference between the body when there is a living being present and the body when the living being is no longer present. Another point Krishna actually makes here in the Bhagavad Gita is also important, is worthwhile exploring. He says, O son of Kunti, Arjuna, the non-permanent appearance of heat and cold, happiness and distress, and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of the winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception, O Arjuna, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. So here the happiness and distress that has been described, each one of us experiences this in the same way as we experience, summer and winter seasons. He's saying this experience of distress and happiness is in connection with the body. We are experiencing it through the senses. And he's saying these experiences of happiness and distress and how much they overwhelm us is due to our identifying with the body as being myself. So when something happens to my body or to the body of a loved one, we experience it as happening to me. Is that understandable? Because I am identifying the body as being me, and when various things, diseases and things like that come onto my body, then I experience this is happening to me. But here Krishna is saying that actually this is happening to the body and to the mind only, and it does not actually touch me. In the same way as, because of falsely or erroneously identifying the body as being myself, it brings on so many anxieties and fears and problems. Even things like when we think and we say things like, I am fat, I am ugly, I am not handsome, I am old. All of these things which cause grief, distress, anxiety to so many people actually is erroneous, because I, the spirit soul, am not fat. I, the spirit soul, am not ugly. In fact, I, the spirit soul, are of the same nature as the Supreme. We are Satchitananda, eternal, full of knowledge, and blissful. We are dazzling and beautiful. That is the nature of the self. But by falsely identifying the body as being me, then all of these, I am fat, I am young, I am old, I have this disease, I am going to die. These distresses come upon us due to not understanding our true spiritual nature. So then, just to move on from this idea a little bit, because as we mentioned earlier, that, okay, so I know aham brahmasmi, I am spirit, I am not matter, I am eternal, I will not die, only the body dies. But where will I go when I leave this body behind? That is the next intelligent question to ask. Not just that I will continue to exist, but what will happen to me? Where will I go? What will I experience? And do I have any say in my onward journey? Does that make sense? No? Anyone say yes? So I'd like to read, this is actually the cut to the chase, this is actually the solution. And then we can get on with some beautiful more kirtan. So this human form of life is actually the opportunity to transcend, to break these chains of birth and death. I'll just read from here on. The wise traveller spends time investigating, seeking guidance and preparing before departing on his journey. It is a foolish traveller who goes on a journey unprepared, with no guidance or knowledge. Leaving this world is a journey we must all take. It is the biggest and most important journey of our lives. And just as a wise traveller plans and prepares for his journey, we too should plan and prepare for the inevitable journey by acknowledging it and by cultivating as much wisdom and spiritual love as possible while we are alive. To prepare for the ultimate journey, we must first decide where you want to go. Yes, you can choose where you'll go at the time of death. To understand how, you need to appreciate this simple law. Your consciousness determines your future, and the actions you take in this life, here and now, determine your consciousness. That's easy to understand, yeah? What we look at, what we read, what we hear, what we do in our life is actually impacting upon our desires and our consciousness. This means that your destiny is in your own hands. You can determine where you will go at the time of death by cultivating your consciousness according to the destination you wish to reach. If by your present actions you increase your attachments to material sense enjoyment, then when you leave this world, you'll be forced to take on another material body and once again suffer from birth, diseases, old age, and death. If, on the other hand, you choose to cultivate God consciousness by your present actions, then when you leave this world, you will go to the Supreme. The key to achieving liberation from the cycle of repeated birth and death is to cultivate your love for the Supreme Soul. The more you taste the sweetness of loving attachment to the Supreme, the less attached you will be to the superficial, fleeting happiness of sensual pleasures. The more you find shelter in the holy names of the Supreme, in your loving relationship with the Supreme, the more you realize how superficial, empty, and fleeting is the happiness derived from sense gratification and worldly attachments. At the time of death, if your attachments your attachment is to the Supreme Soul and the holy names of the Supreme, is greater than your attachment to this world, then you will enter into that eternal spiritual abode. The Supreme Soul, who is your supreme friend, promises in the Bhagavad Gita that one who loves him will go to him after leaving this material body. He says, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, always think of me and become my devotee. Worship me and offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. For one who worships me, giving up all their activities unto me, being devoted to me, loving me, thinking of me, meditating upon me, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. So here is the very clear key on how we can actually overcome this repeated birth and death. You can cultivate such loving attachment to the Supreme Soul by practicing meditation or chanting of the holy names of the Supreme regularly. Since the holy names and the Supreme Soul are one and the same, the more you are attached to the holy name, the more you are attached to the Supreme. Gradually this attachment matures into actual transcendental or spiritual love for the Supreme Soul. As attachment to and love for the Supreme increases, attachment to and love for the world decreases proportionally. So the secret is this: if you find your deepest happiness immersing yourself in the chanting and meditating upon the holy names of the Supreme, when you leave this world, you will naturally embrace the holy names in your heart. Like a butterfly lifted by a gentle breeze into the sky, you will be picked up by the gentle breeze of the holy name, by the unconditional love of the Supreme Soul, and transported into the spiritual abode. Krishna says, after attaining me, the great Mahatmas or yogis in devotion never come back to this temporary material world, which is so full of miseries. End of quote. In other words, if at the time of death you are attached to the Supreme Soul, you will be liberated from the suffering of the wheel of birth and death. You, the eternal spirit soul, will not need to return to the material world and take on another material body. Instead, you will return home to the eternal spiritual world, which is full of knowledge and bliss. So this is the very simple solution to the problems. Not only are we spirit soul, we actually have an eternal kinship of love to the Supreme. So it is by uncovering that eternal but now dormant love with the Supreme, by the process, what is known as bhakti or bhakti yoga, that one can actually then determine one's destiny by developing that spiritual consciousness here and now. So how can we actually approach the Supreme? How can we actually meditate upon the Supreme? This is the process that we're doing here tonight. Because there is no difference between the holy name of God and God. They are of the same absolute nature. So when we hear, sing, chant, meditate, and actually embrace within the core of our very being these transcendental sounds of the holy names of God, we are actually embracing the Supreme Soul. Now, maybe that's not, we don't experience that in the beginning. But as was said, by regular practice of hearing and chanting and taking shelter in the Supreme through transcendental sound, then this love naturally awakens. So it is by cultivating spiritual love and wisdom that we can actually transcend the fear of death and also transcend the repeated cycle of birth and death, repeated birth and death. So the very easy process of kirtan, this is what we're doing here, this is what this is all about. It's not just to have a nice time, although of course we do. It is actually far deeper than that. It actually enables us to find that happiness, that joy, that contentment, that peace, that shelter, that love which we are looking for. And it can transport us beyond the material realm into that eternal spiritual realm. And this is the goal of life. This is the goal of spiritual cultivation. you very much.